We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Long gone are the days when scandal plays itself out behind closed doors. Now, each utterance and factoid is debated in the public sphere to fill the ever-hungry 24-hour news cycle. But not the findings of John Durham, it seems. The legacy media has decided this is all information non grata. How and why are the questions to be answered? And to help us with that, we're joined by author and podcaster, Mr. Jeff Charles. Welcome back to the show, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
So, Jeff, the latest Durham findings, for many people, they're somewhat shocking, to say the least, assuming that they are what they represent to be. And yet we've heard little from the left-leaning media other than efforts to poo-poo the entire investigation. What's your take on this?
Wait, you mean they found out that they were spying on the Trump administration while Trump was in office and the media isn't talking about it? I'm shocked. I can't believe that. No, here's what's going on here, Mark. Of course they're not talking about this because they don't want the American public to know about it. Trump was right. Everybody else was right. The whole thing was a scam from the beginning. And what got me about this is that they weren't trying to actually find a tie to Russia and Trump. They were trying to look for whatever they could to concoct one. So yeah, of course the activist media isn't going to cover this, at least not yet. I mean, eventually I think it's going to get to the point where they have to, but right now, mum's the word.
Okay, now I'm old enough to remember when Robert Mueller's investigation was the most important event in the whole history of mankind, at least according to the Fourth Estate. So why is this investigation different? I mean, we know that the Steele dossier that began the entire Russiagate affair and narrative, it was a fake. This is not even in dispute anymore, I guess. So why try to hide the origins of it?
Yeah, the reason this investigation is different, Mark, is because it doesn't promote their political agenda. See, the reason they don't want the American public to know about this is because, yeah, the American public already know. By now, pretty much everybody knows the Steele dossier was fake, that Robert Mueller's $32 million investigation was basically based on a hoax, but they don't know how egregious it was. They don't know the extent to which the Clinton campaign and the Democrats and these operatives were going to try to cook up this narrative about Trump and Russia. Like, this is if Durham's allegations are true, this is a huge bombshell that shouldn't be ignored, but they're going to ignore it because they don't want all of us to know how bad this actually was.
Yeah, for those of us who watch these media shenanigans quite closely, I think this path of poo-pooing the reports and the information that's coming out rather than reporting on it, it was almost expected, wasn't it? I mean, this is what we knew would happen, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, once Biden stepped foot in the Oval Office, the activist media went from being an attack dog against the Trump administration to becoming the Democrats' Ministry of Propaganda. So why would they report on this? I mean, the mask is off, Mark. I mean, these people are activists, and they are actively working to promote the Biden administration and to try to drag him to success by hook or by crook. So yeah, if that's their role, if that's how they see their role, which I believe they do, why would they even touch the story unless they can find a way to spin it?
Yeah, I'm seeing that Fox News is coming out like a dog on a bone with this story, and it's one of the few major outlets that really are. Now, you and I, if we get our news from a range of sources, as we must, we're journalists, we have to get balance, we have to get proper coverage, and we have to see what each side of the equation is saying. But are you surprised at how distinct the battle lines between the left and the right are on this? Specifically, I think because the Durham investigation was covered by the media before, and you mentioned the Mueller investigation that cost millions upon millions, and until this very latest notion on John Durham, the last story, for example, on CNN was back in September, and it was saying this investigation has cost $3.8 million, which is, of course, a drop in the ocean of how much these things technically cost. So why the division? Because you'd expect them to report at least something on it, wouldn't you?
No, and I think they will, Mark. I think right now they're just kind of waiting to see what might come out of this. I think they're also trying to figure out how to spin it. But you're right. I mean, I looked on CNN, New York Times, MSNBC, all of the big players, and there was nothing. There was nothing but crickets. When I looked up Durham, they showed me a picture of a cricket on these sites because they're not touching this. So I think that they're trying to be silent right now. Maybe they're hoping that it'll go away, that it'll blow over. But they do not want to report on this honestly, and there's a reason why.
So final question for you, Jeff. What would it take for them to actually begin covering the story? You mentioned that obviously they might be looking for a certain angle of narrative to run, or they're waiting for further developments. But what would bring this story out into the open on sites all across the spectrum?
I would say one of two things, or maybe even both. One, information comes out that allows them to spin the story in a way that obfuscates what actually happened, so that the public doesn't actually see how serious this was. If there's something that they can use to spin it, then they'll start to cover it, but they'll start to cover it in a way that is skewed in their favor. Two, it could be that some other information comes out that makes that even shows us even that the situation was even worse. And at a certain point, they're not going to be able to ignore it because it's going to be out there so much with other types of media, like you mentioned, Fox News and others. So at some point, they are going to cover it. It's just a matter of which happens first, I believe.
Jeff Charles, thank you ever so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
You're listening to Liberty Nation Radio, heard across the Radio America network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. And remember, you can tune in for Liberty Nation from 2 to 3 p.m. Sundays on KBKW 103.5 FM, 1450 AM. Coming down the pipeline, we're looking at just what crimes have and have not been committed as far as the Durham investigation says. But up next, what happens when the left cancels itself? We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on.